The syndicate head's heir wouldn't stop screaming at 30,000 feet until a fleeing widow risked everything to do the unthinkable. The infant's wail didn't just fill the first-class cabin. It tore through the pressurized silence like a jagged blade, relentless and agonizing. Every high-profile passenger shifted in their leather seats, eyes darting toward the disturbance before quickly snapping away in terror. No one dared to complain, not while Kang Jae-hoon held the child. Jae-hoon sat with a lethal, predatory stillness, his jaw set with enough tension to snap steel. The tailored dark suit and luxury watch, symbols of his absolute authority, now felt like a suffocating shroud. His dark, intense eyes, usually narrowed with cold calculation, betrayed a flicker of something human and horrifying, raw, helpless panic. The baby, a tiny bundle in a soft blue blanket, flailed against Jae-hoon's broad chest, bearing a bloodline legacy he was too small to carry. 2 months since a rival's hit had stolen the child's mother. 2 months since the man who controlled the East Asian underground had become the one thing he couldn't kill his way out of, a failure. Wait, just a moment, please. We have a small goal of reaching 10,000 subscribers, and your support would truly mean a lot to us. If you're enjoying this story, please consider subscribing. Thank you for being here with us. The scream tore through the cabin like a blade through silk. Jae-hoon's fingers tightened around the armrest until his knuckles went white. Another scream followed, raw, animal, edged with the kind of pain that made his entire body tense with the primal urge to act. Someone help her, a man's voice from first class, high and panicked. Please, someone. Jae-hoon was already unbuckling his seatbelt when the flight attendant rushed past, her face professionally composed, but her eyes betraying her fear. He watched her disappear beyond the curtain that separated economy from first class, that thin barrier between him and whatever catastrophe was unfolding 30 feet away. I could help. The thought burned through him like acid. I could end this in seconds. But his hand froze halfway to the call button. His healing touch, the gift that had saved hundreds, that had knitted bones and sealed wounds and pulled people back from death's threshold, required contact. Skin to skin, and skin-to-skin contact with a pregnant woman he didn't know, especially in her condition, especially now. The accusation would come before her pain even ended. Inappropriate, assault, predatory. He could already see it. The lawsuit, the headlines, his face plastered across every news outlet in Korea. Disgraced healer touches pregnant woman without consent. His mother's tears. His father's stone-faced disappointment. The foundation he'd built over 15 years, crumbling. Another scream split the air, longer this time, dissolving into breathless sobbing. Jae-hoon's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. His gift thrummed beneath his skin like a caged tiger, demanding release. Every instinct honed by years of emergency rooms and disaster sites screamed at him to move, to help, to do something. The old woman beside him touched his arm. Can't someone help her? They're trying, he managed, but the words tasted like ash. What could they do at 30,000 feet? Comfort her, hold her hand, offer her water, meaningless gestures while her body tore itself apart. The flight attendant reappeared, her composure finally cracking. She spoke urgently into the intercom. If there's a doctor on board, please identify yourself immediately. Jae-hoon's hand twitched toward the call button again. I'm not a doctor. The excuse felt pathetic even in his own mind. He was something better than a doctor. He could save her, save them both with a single touch. 30 seconds, that's all it would take. But the cost... My baby, the woman's voice wailed from beyond the curtain. Please, my baby. Something inside Jae-hoon's chest cracked. Not his resolve, that held, barely, but something deeper. The part of him that had chosen this gift, that had dedicated his life to healing, that had sworn to use his abilities to help anyone in need. Anyone, except when it might destroy you. The thought made him sick. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably Jun Seo, wondering why he wasn't answering messages. Or his assistant, with details about tomorrow's schedule. The carefully constructed life waiting for him in Tokyo, built on reputation and trust and the assumption that he would always do the right thing. Except now when it mattered most. Another scream, weaker this time, exhausted, the sound of someone losing. Jae-hoon closed his eyes and felt something fundamental shift inside him. Not breaking, not yet, but bending in ways that would leave permanent marks. The weight of his inaction pressed down on him like physical force, crushing his chest until each breath became a conscious effort. This is what helplessness feels like, he thought. This is what everyone else lives with every day. He'd never understood it before. He'd always had his power, his ability to fix things, to make broken things whole. But power without the freedom to use it wasn't power at all. It was just another kind of prison. Elena's hands trembled in her lap, fingers laced so tightly together her wedding ring dug into her skin. Another scream pierced the cabin, and she felt it like a physical blow, not to her ears, but somewhere deeper. Somewhere primal that recognized the sound of a mother in agony, the sound of a life hanging in the balance. Not again. The thought came unbidden, unwelcome. Please, God, not again. She pressed her palms flat against her thighs, trying to ground herself in the present. The rough texture of her jeans, the recycled air cool against her face. Marcus beside her, focused on his laptop, oblivious to the way her entire body had gone rigid. But that scream, it pulled at something inside her chest, something that had been dormant for 3 years but never truly silent. The part of her that still woke sometimes at 3 a.m., listening for a cry that would never come. "Elena," Marcus glanced at her, finally noticing. "You okay?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. The flight attendants rushed past again, their professional masks slipping. One of them was crying. Elena saw it in the shine of her eyes, the way she bit her lip to keep it from trembling. That bad then. Her medical training kicked in automatically, running through possibilities. Placental abruption, premature labor, preeclampsia. Any of them could be catastrophic at altitude, miles from the nearest hospital. And if it was the baby, if the baby was in distress. Her hand moved unconsciously to her own abdomen, flat and empty beneath her shirt. The phantom weight of what she'd carried for 7 months, 3 years ago, pressed against her palm like a memory made solid. Sophia, her daughter's name, spoken only once aloud, in the sterile quiet of a hospital room, to a child who would never hear it. Born too early, too small, her tiny lungs struggling for air they couldn't process. Elena had held her for 47 minutes. She'd counted every second. If there's a doctor on board. The announcement barely registered through the roaring in Elena's ears. She should respond. She was a nurse. She had skills, training, experience. She could help. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. What if it's too late? What if you get there and she's already? Another scream, weaker now, fatting, the sound of someone giving up. Elena's breath caught. She knew that sound. She'd made it herself 3 years ago when the monitors had flatlined and the doctors had stopped trying, and the only thing left was the weight of her daughter in her arms, growing colder. "I should," the words stuck in her throat. Marcus looked at her, really looked this time, and she saw the moment he understood. His hand found hers, squeezed. "You don't have to." "Don't I?" She'd spent 3 years rebuilding herself. Therapy, support groups, the careful, painful work of learning to function again, to smile again, to imagine a future that didn't feel like a betrayal of the past. She'd left nursing because she couldn't bear the maternity ward anymore, couldn't watch mothers hold their healthy bobbies while hers was buried in a plot she visited every Sunday. She'd left because she was broken, and broken things couldn't heal others. But that scream, it pulled at her like a riptide, like the inexorable gravity of a collapsing star. Every maternal instinct she possessed screamed at her to move, to help, to do whatever she could, because somewhere in this plane was a mother fighting for her child, and Elena knew, God, she knew what it felt like to lose that fight. She couldn't save Sophia. The medical system, with all its technology and expertise, hadn't been able to save Sophia. But maybe, Her hands steadied. Not completely. Not the rock-solid confidence she'd once possessed, back when she believed training and skill could overcome anything. But enough. Enough to try. "I have to go," she whispered. Marcus's grip tightened. "Elena." "I have to." She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, her legs unsteady beneath her, her heart hammering against her ribs. For Sophia, she thought, for the mother I couldn't be. And walked toward first class. The curtain separating economy from first class had never looked so immense. Elena's hand hesitated at the fabric, her nurse's instincts warring with the fear that had defined her last 3 years. From beyond, it came a sound that made her blood run cold, not a scream this time, but something worse. Silence. The kind of silence that came after the body had nothing left to give. She pushed through. The scene hit her like a wall. A woman, Middle Eastern, maybe, or South Asian, lay sprawled across 2 seats, her face gray and slick with sweat. Blood stained her dress, too much blood, spreading dark across the leather. 2 flight attendants hovered uselessly, one holding towels that were already soaked through, the other speaking frantically into a phone. And standing between Elena and the woman were 2 men in suits, hands already moving inside their jackets. "Ma'am, return to your seat." The one on the left, square jaw, dead eyes, the stance of someone trained to end threats, his fingers wrapped around something at his hip. Elena's heart stuttered, but her feet kept moving. "I'm a nurse. I can help." "Return to your seat." Not a request. The second guard stepped forward, his jacket falling open just enough to reveal the shoulder holster beneath. Air marshals. Of course there would be air marshals in first class. "She's dying." Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "That baby is dying, I can." "Ma'am, this is your final warning." The first guard's hand emerged, not with a weapon but reaching toward her, ready to physically remove her. Something in Elena's chest ignited. She'd spent 3 years backing down. 3 years making herself smaller, quieter, less. 3 years letting fear make her decisions, letting trauma convince her she was too broken to matter. But that woman on those seats could be her. That baby, struggling or maybe already gone, could be Sophia. "No," the word came out sharp, final. The guard's eyes widened slightly. "Ma'am." "Shoot me if you have to." Elena stepped forward, her voice rising. "But that woman is hemorrhaging, and if someone doesn't help her in the next 60 seconds, she and her baby are both going to die, and you'll have to explain to everyone on this plane why you prevented a medical professional from saving them." The cabin had gone deathly quiet. Elena could feel every eye on her, could see the other passengers in first class, wealthy, important people, watching with expressions that ranged from horror to fascination. "I need to see credentials," the guard said, but his hand had moved away from his weapon. "I don't have credentials. I don't have a medical bag. I don't have anything except 10 years of experience and the knowledge that woman has maybe minutes left." Elena's voice cracked. "Please, please." A moan from the woman on the seats, weak, thready. One of the flight attendants looked up, tears streaming down her face. "She's fatting. The baby, I can't find a heartbeat." Elena moved. The guard's hand shot out to stop her, but she was already past him, dropping to her knees beside the woman. Up close, it was worse. The blood loss was catastrophic. The woman's lips had gone blue, her breathing shallow and rapid. Shock, severe, possibly minutes from cardiac arrest. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Elena pressed her fingers to the woman's throat, feeling for a pulse. Thready, racing. "I'm Elena, I'm a nurse, I'm going to help you." The woman's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with pain. Her hand clutched at Elena's arm with surprising strength. "My baby," she whispered. "Save my baby." The words drove into Elena's chest like a knife. She'd heard them before. She'd said them before, in a hospital room 3 years ago, gripping a doctor's sleeve while her world collapsed. No one had been able to save Sophia. But maybe. "I'm going to try," Elena said, and felt the weight of that promise settle over her like a mantle. "I need towels, clean water, anything you can." Behind her, she heard the guards step back, heard the flight attendant scrambling to help, heard her own heart pounding as she reached for a life she might not be able to save. Alina's hands moved on instinct, years of training overriding the fear that threatened to paralyze her. I need her flat, now. She helped the flight attendants lower the woman onto the floor between the seats, the narrow space barely enough to work. And I need to see. Someone get me light, a phone, anything. 3 phones appeared immediately, their flashlights illuminating the horror Alina had only glimpsed before. The woman's dress was soaked through, blood pooling beneath her. But it was the absence of movement, the terrible stillness of the abdomen that should have been shifting with life, that made Alina's throat close. No, not again. Please, not again. How far along are you? Alina asked, though the woman's eyes had rolled back, consciousness slipping. She turned to the husband, a man frozen in terror beside his wife. Sir, how many weeks? 36, he choked out. The baby is the baby. Alina didn't answer. She pressed her fingers to the woman's abdomen, feeling for movement for anything. The uterus was rigid, hard as stone, placental abruption. The placenta had torn away, cutting off the baby's oxygen supply. How long had the baby been without air? Her mind raced through options, each one impossible. Emergency C-section at 30,000 feet with no surgical equipment. Delivery without the ability to resuscitate. The baby might already be. Stop, focus. I need to deliver this baby. The words came out calm, clinical, though her hands trembled. Right here, right now. The flight attendant beside her went white. There's no equipment. Then we improvise. Alina looked up, her eyes scanning the crowd of first-class passengers who had gathered, some pressing back against their seats, others leaning forward. I need blankets, towels, anything clean, and alcohol, sanitizer, vodka, anything. They scattered, suddenly grateful for a task, for something to do besides watch. Alina turned back to the woman and began checking for dilation, her movements swift and practiced despite the confined space. Almost complete. The body was trying to expel the pregnancy, trying to save itself even as it failed to save the child within. Ma'am, she said urgently, leaning close to the woman's ear. I need you to push. Can you hear me? I need you to. The woman's eyes fluttered open, glassy with pain. Dead, she whispered. The baby's dead, I can feel. We don't know that, but I need your help. Alina gripped her hand. When I say push, you push, understand. A contraction rippled through the woman's body, and she screamed, the sound raw and primal. Alina guided her through it, feeling the baby begin to crown, and then movement. Not from the mother, but from behind her. Alina glanced up and her breath caught. A man stood at the edge of the crowd, Korean, maybe 30, his face a mask of barely controlled anguish. But it was his eyes that stopped her, dark and intense, and fixed on the baby with a hunger that transcended ordinary concern. Their gazes locked. In that instant, Alina saw everything. The way his hands clenched at his sides, the subtle lean of his body forward, held back only by iron will, the desperate, helpless rage of someone who could do something but wouldn't or couldn't. She didn't know how she knew, but she knew asterisk. He could save this baby. The certainty hit her like electricity, inexplicable and absolute. This stranger, watching from the shadows, possessed something, some ability, some power, that could undo all of this. Then why isn't he moving? Their eye contact held for 3 seconds. 4. In his eyes, Alina saw a mirror of her own breaking, the weight of a life you couldn't save, the guilt that hollowed you out from the inside. He looked away first. And Alina understood. He was choosing safety over salvation, choosing himself over this child. Rage flooded through her, hot and purifying. She turned back to the mother. Push, now. The baby came in a rush of blood and fluid, small and gray and terrifyingly still. Alina caught the infant in her hands and her training took over. Clear the airway, stimulate, rub the back, the feet. She worked with desperate efficiency, aware of every second ticking past, every moment without oxygen causing irreversible damage. "Breathe, please breathe." The baby remained limp in her hands. Silent. Gone. The baby wasn't breathing. Jae-hoon watched from his position against the bulkhead, his gift screaming inside him like a living thing trapped beneath his skin. 30 seconds. That's all it would take. 30 seconds to place his hands on that tiny chest and flood those lungs with life, to restart that heart, to undo what hypoxia and trauma had done. His feet stayed planted. The nurse, Alina, he'd heard someone call her, worked with frantic precision, performing infant CPR on the cabin floor. Her fingers positioned on the baby's sternum, compressions at a pace Jae-hoon recognized from his own emergency training. But her hands were shaking now, and he could see the moment she realized what he already knew. She was losing. "Come on," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Come on, baby, please." Nothing. The mother had lost consciousness. The father stood frozen, his face a mask of dawning horror. The flight attendants hovered uselessly, and Jae-hoon stood in the shadows, his healing power burning through him like acid, corroding him from the inside out. I could save this child. The thought was torture. Then movement caught his eye, someone pushing through the crowd from economy. A man, early 30s, panic written across his features. "Alina, what's—" He stopped dead when he saw the scene. The blood, the baby. "Marcus, not now," Alina said without looking up, continuing compressions. I can't." But Jae-hoon wasn't looking at the man anymore. He was looking at the child the man carried. A boy, maybe 4 years old, clutching a stuffed dinosaur and staring at the chaos with wide, solemn eyes. Brown hair, darker than his mother's. His father's chin, and on his left shoulder just visible where his shirt had slipped. Jae-hoon's breath stopped. The birthmark. It was small, barely the size of a coin, shaped like a crescent moon. But Jae-hoon would have recognized it anywhere. He'd seen it exactly once before, 17 years ago, on a newborn baby boy placed in his 15-year-old hands by a nurse who'd smiled and said, "Would you like to hold your brother?" The mark of the Kang, a genetic quirk that appeared in his family line every few generations, always on the left shoulder, always the same shape. Jae-hoon had one. His brother Min-jun had one. And this American child, this boy who shouldn't exist, who couldn't exist, had one. The implications slammed into Jae-hoon like a physical blow. Impossible. But even as his mind rejected it, his gift recognized something deeper. Not just the birthmark, but something in the child's presence, some resonance that called to the power in Jae-hoon's blood. Family recognized family. Power recognized power. This boy carried Kang blood. Which meant somewhere in his lineage, recent enough to matter, was Jae-hoon's family. The boy's eyes found Jae-hoon's across the crowded cabin. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then the child tilted his head, studying Jae-hoon with an intensity that seemed far too old for his years. "Mama's sad," the boy said, his voice carrying clearly in the awful silence. "Why won't you help?" The words struck Jae-hoon like a blade between the ribs. Marcus pulled his son back. "Noah, come on, let your mother work." Noah. The name settled into Jae-hoon's consciousness like a key turning in a lock. On the floor, Alina had stopped compressions. Her shoulders shook. The baby lay still in her hands, blue-gray and silent. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Jae-hoon's gift surged, demanding release. But now it wasn't just the dying infant pulling at him. It was the child, Noah, watching him with eyes that somehow knew asterisk. It was Alina, breaking apart over a life she couldn't save. It was the impossible connection that bound them all together in this moment, in this place. Fate, his grandmother would have called it. The invisible threads that drew certain souls together across time and distance and circumstance. Jae-hoon had never believed in fate. But he believed in family. And family, even family he didn't know existed, demanded loyalty, demanded sacrifice, demanded asterisk action. His feet moved before his mind could catch up, carrying him forward through the crowd. People parted instinctively, sensing something in his approach. Alina looked up, her face streaked with tears, and their eyes met again. This time, he didn't look away. "Let me try," he said quietly, and reached for the child. The baby's first cry had sounded like salvation. Alina sat in the terminal now, 3 hours after landing, still feeling the phantom weight of that infant in her arms. Still hearing that impossible, miraculous wail that had erupted from lungs that should have been silent forever. The Korean man, Jae-hoon, she'd learned, had simply placed his hands on the baby's chest. 30 seconds. That's all it had taken. 30 seconds of his fingers pressed against tiny ribs, his eyes closed in concentration, and then life. The medical team that met them at LAX had called it a miracle. Spontaneous recovery. Impossible but undeniable. They'd rushed mother and baby to Cedars-Sinai, leaving Alina to give her statement to a parade of officials who looked at her like she'd walked on water. She'd saved a life. That's what everyone kept saying. But she knew the truth. She'd been failing. She'd been losing. And that stranger had done something she couldn't explain, something that violated everything she understood about medicine and death and the finality of both. "Mrs. Reeves." Alina looked up to find a woman in an immaculate black suit approaching, her heels clicking on the terminal floor. Asian, maybe 40, with the kind of severe elegance that suggested money. Serious money. "Yes. I'm Kim Yoon-mai, representing the Kang Foundation." The woman extended a slim folder. "Mr. Kang asked me to deliver this personally." Alina took it with numb fingers, her exhaustion making everything feel dreamlike. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a debt cancellation notice from UCLA Medical Center. Her student loans, all $127,000 of them, paid in full. "I don't," Alina's voice caught. "I can't accept this." "It's already done." Yoon-mai's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Kang is grateful for your courage on the flight. He wished to express his appreciation." "This is too much. I did what anyone would." "You risked yourself for strangers. You stood against armed guards to save a life." For the first time, something like warmth entered Yoon-mai's eyes. "That deserves recognition." Alina stared at the paper, at the number that had haunted her for years, now stamped paid. The debt that had driven her from nursing, that had forced her into medical billing, that had represented every dollar she'd borrowed to try to save Sophia and failed. Gone. "There's one more thing." Yoon-mai produced a business card, heavy stock embossed. "Mr. Kang would like to speak with you. If you're willing, a car is waiting to take you to his residence in Malibu." Alarm bells rang in Alina's head. "I don't think." "Your husband and son are welcome, of course. Mr. Kang specifically requested that Noah join you." Alina's blood went cold. "How do you know my son's name?" "Mr. Kang noticed him on the flight." Yoon-mai's tone remained professionally pleasant, but something shifted behind her eyes. "He believes you may have mutual interests to discuss." Every instinct screamed danger. Strange billionaire, private residence, too specific interest in her child. This was how people disappeared, how families made terrible mistakes they couldn't undo. But another part of her, the part that had watched Jae-hoon's hands bring a dead baby back to life, needed answers. Needed to understand what she'd witnessed, what it meant, why someone with that kind of power would risk exposing himself. And why he was so interested in Noah. "Just a conversation," Yoon-mai said, reading her hesitation. "1 hour. The car will bring you home afterward, but Mr. Kang felt it was important to speak with you personally, before you leave Los Angeles." The phrasing sent ice down Alina's spine. "Before you leave," as if he knew her plans, as if he'd been watching. Marcus appeared from the restroom with Noah, who was dragging his dinosaur and fighting sleep. Her husband took one look at her face and tensed. "Alina, what's wrong?" She looked at the debt cancellation notice, at the business card with its understated elegance, at Yoon-mai, who waited with the patience of someone who already knew the answer. "Nothing's wrong," Alina heard herself say. but I think we need to make a stop before we go home. The black Mercedes waited at the curb, sleek and expensive and somehow inevitable. Elena picked up Noah, held him close, and walked toward whatever came next. The villa clung to the Malibu cliffs like a modern sculpture, all glass and white stone, overlooking an ocean that blazed gold in the setting sun. Elena held Noah's hand as they followed Yunmai through rooms that seemed designed to intimidate. Minimalist, expensive, cold. Jaehoon waited in a study lined with books in multiple languages. He'd changed from the flight, now wearing casual linen that somehow made him look more formidable, not less. When he turned to face them, his eyes went immediately to Noah. "Thank you for coming." His English was precise, accented. "Please sit." Marcus positioned himself slightly in front of Elena and Noah, protective. "We appreciate the gesture with the loans, but we need to understand what's happening here." "Of course." Jaehoon gestured to the seating area, waited until they'd settled, Marcus rigid with tension, Elena perched on the edge of the couch with Noah in her lap. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but you've already seen impossible today, Mrs. Reeves. You watched me bring a child back from death." Elena's arms tightened around Noah. "How did you do it?" "I'm a healer, born with the ability to repair damage, restore function, reverse trauma." He said it matter-of-factly, the way someone might mention being left-handed. "It's a genetic gift that runs in my family, the Kang bloodline." "That's," Marcus started. "Impossible, yes." Jaehoon's smile was brief, humorless. "Yet you saw it, just as I saw something equally impossible on that flight." His gaze settled on Noah, who stared back with unnerving calm for a 4-year-old. "Your son carries the mark of the Kang, a birthmark that appears only in my direct family line, only in those who carry the potential for our gifts." Jaehoon leaned forward. "Which means Noah has Kang blood, recent Kang blood." The room went silent, except for the distant crash of waves. "That's ridiculous," Marcus said. "Elena's family is Irish and German. Mine is English, there's no Korean." "Not you." Jaehoon's eyes never left Noah. "But somewhere in the past few generations, your bloodlines intersected with mine. Perhaps a grandfather who served in Korea, perhaps a great-grandmother with secrets. It doesn't matter how. What matters is what it means." Elena felt cold. "Which is?" "In Korean, we have a word. Asterisk in yon asterisk. It means fate. The invisible threads that bind certain souls together across lifetimes, across continents, across circumstances." Jaehoon stood, moved to the window. "You and I, Mrs. Reeves, we are bound by Inyon now. You saved that child on the plane through courage. I saved it through power. Together, we created a miracle." "So, thank you." Marcus's voice dripped skepticism. "We're grateful, but..." "The child I saved today will live because of your wife's determination to try when everyone else had given up." Jaehoon turned back to them. "In my culture, that creates a debt, a blood debt. The mother who lives, the baby who breathes, they owe their existence to Elena." "I don't want anything from them," Elena said quickly. "I know, which is why the debt transfers to me." Jaehoon's expression was unreadable. "I owe you a life, and there is only one way to repay it." He crossed to a desk, retrieved a folder thick with documents. "Noah will begin manifesting gifts within the next year, maybe sooner, healing like mine or perhaps something else, precognition, enhanced empathy, abilities we can't predict." Jaehoon set the folder on the coffee table between them. "When that happens, he will need training, protection, understanding, things only someone like me can provide." Elena's heart hammered. "You want to take my son?" "No," Jaehoon's voice softened fractionally. "I want you to stay, both of you, here in Los Angeles. Let me establish you, provide for you, ensure Noah grows up with the guidance he'll need." "This is insane," Marcus stood abruptly. "You can't just we have lives, jobs, family in Colorado." "You have debt," Jaehoon said quietly. "Medical bills beyond the student loans, I suspect. A mortgage you're struggling with. And a son who will soon begin doing things you can't explain, attracting attention you can't manage." He wasn't wrong. Elena could see it in Marcus's face, The flash of recognition, the terrible understanding that this stranger knew too much. "I'm offering you freedom," Jae-hoon continued. "Financial security, safety. In exchange, Alina becomes Noah's life giver, the one who ensures he uses his gifts wisely, who keeps him grounded in humanity while I teach him control." "And if we refuse," Alina whispered. Jae-hoon's eyes were dark, ancient. "Then you raise a child with impossible abilities alone. No protection, no guidance, no understanding of what hunts people like us." Noah stirred in Alina's lap, looked up at her with those two knowing eyes. "Mama," he said softly, "I like it here." And Alina felt the threads of fate pull tight. The guest suite was more luxurious than anywhere Alina had ever stayed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. A bathroom with heated marble floors. A bedroom for Noah with toys that seemed carefully selected, educational, expensive, appropriate for his age. Marcus had refused to stay. He'd taken the contract Jae-hoon offered, promised to read it, and left in the Merceds with tight shoulders and a face Alina knew meant a fight was coming. But he'd agreed to let her and Noah spend the night. Just one night to think. Now, with Noah finally asleep in the next room, Alina explored. The villa was beautiful, pristine, and as she wandered its halls in the dark, she began to notice things. The windows didn't open, none of them. Sealed shut, she discovered, testing each one in the living areas. The glass was thick, too thick. Bulletproof, probably, maybe soundproof too. The front door required a keycard she didn't have. She'd watched Yoonmai use one on their way in, the lock clicking with digital finality. The back entrance to the garden, locked. The service entrance near the kitchen, locked. The door to what looked like a garage, locked. Every exit secured. Alina's pulse quickened as she moved through the ground floor, testing, searching. There had to be a way out. Had to be. This was a home, not a prison. People came and went. Staff, visitors, Jae-hoon himself. But not her. Not without permission. She found herself in the study where they'd met earlier, drawn by a light still burning. Jae-hoon sat in one of the leather chairs, a book in his lap, as if he'd been waiting. "Can't sleep." His voice was quiet, unsurprised. Alina's hands clenched. "The doors are locked." "For your safety. This property has significant security measures." "Against what?" Jae-hoon closed his book, studied her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "There are people who would pay millions for access to someone like me. Governments, corporations, criminal organizations. And there are those who fear people with abilities, who would rather see us dead than risk what we represent. So you lock everyone in." "I protect what's valuable." He stood, moved to a side table where crystal decanters caught the lamplight. "Would you like a drink?" "I want to leave." "The car will take you home in the morning, as promised." "And if I decide not to come back?" Jae-hoon poured amber liquid into 2 glasses, offered her one. When she didn't take it, he set it on the table beside her. "That's your choice. I'm not holding you prisoner, Alina. I'm offering you an opportunity. An opportunity that comes with locked doors and contracts, and demands I uproot my entire life." Yes, no apology in his voice. Because the alternative is watching Noah manifest abilities he doesn't understand, in a place where I can't protect him, where you can't protect him. Alina thought of Noah's words earlier. "I like it here." The certainty in his small voice, as if he'd recognized something, come home to something. "You knew," she said suddenly. "On the plane, you knew he was yours, your family, before you saved that baby." Jae-hoon's silence was answer enough. "You did it for him, not for the mother, not for me, for Noah." "I did it because it was right." Jae-hoon's jaw tightened. "But yes, seeing Noah, understanding what he was, it made the choice easier, the consequences more bearable." "What consequences?" He touched his chest, a brief gesture. "Using my gift publicly, exposing myself, creating questions I'll spend years avoiding." His eyes met hers. "But some debts outweigh personal safety, family debts, blood debts." Alina sank into the chair, exhaustion and fear and confusion warring inside her. "He's 4 years old. He's a baby. He likes dinosaurs and refuses to eat vegetables and has nightmares about monsters under his bed. And within a year, he'll be able to do things that will terrify him. Terrify you? Jae-hoon's voice softened. I was 7 when my healing first manifested. I touched my grandmother's hand and cured her arthritis without knowing what I'd done. For weeks, I thought I'd poisoned her, that I was dangerous. He leaned forward, and for the first time, Alina saw past the control to the person beneath, someone who'd lived with impossible gifts in a world that feared them. Noah needs a mother who understands what's coming, who can help him stay human even as he becomes something more. Jae-hoon's voice was quiet, intense. You lost a daughter. I'm offering you the chance to save a son. The words hit like a physical blow. That's not fair, Alina whispered. No, Jae-hoon agreed, but it's true. Outside, the ocean crashed against the cliffs. Inside, Alina felt the cage close around her, golden, beautiful, inescapable, and realized she'd walked into it willingly. The gunshot woke Alina at 2:47 a.m. She was on her feet before conscious thought caught up, maternal instinct overriding exhaustion. Another shot, closer, the distinctive crack of a suppressed weapon, then shouting in Korean from somewhere below. Noah. She burst into his room. He was sitting up in bed, eyes wide but eerily calm, clutching his dinosaur. Mama. Come here, baby. Alina scooped him up, her mind racing. The suite, the locked doors. They were trapped on the second floor with armed intruders somewhere in the house. Glass shattered downstairs. More shots, a scream cut short. Alina's nurse training kicked in, overriding panic. Assess, act, survive. She scanned the room for options. The windows didn't open. The door to the hallway was the only exit, and between her and it was everything. The sound of boots on marble, multiple sets moving with military precision, voices speaking rapid Korean, then English heavily accented. Second floor, the child and the woman. They were coming for Noah. Alina backed against the far wall, her son pressed to her chest. Her eyes fell on the bathroom, too obvious, no lock, then the closet. Better. She could barricade by time hope Jae-hoon's security would. A cry pierced the air. Not Noah, younger, an infant's wail. The baby from the flight. Alina's blood turned to ice. They were here. The mother and baby she'd saved, somewhere in this villa, and the attackers were. The crying intensified, coming from a room adjacent to theirs. Through the wall, Alina could hear it clearly now, the panicked wail of a newborn, and beneath it, a woman's terrified sobbing. Mama, the baby's scared, Noah whispered against her shoulder. The boots were in the hallway now. Alina could hear them stopping at doors, kicking them open, searching. She had seconds. The decision came without thought, driven by the same force that had pushed her through the curtain on the plane, past the armed guards, toward a dying child. The part of her that had broken when Sophia died but had never quite surrendered. Alina set Noah down, knelt to his eye level. Listen to me very carefully. I need you to hide in the closet, all the way in the back behind the clothes. Don't come out until I come get you. Understand? But now Noah. He went, his small face set with a seriousness that broke her heart. She watched him disappear into the closet, then turned to the adjoining door she'd noticed earlier, the one connecting to the next suite. It was unlocked. Alina slipped through into a nursery that matched Noah's room in luxury. The mother from the plane, Amira, she'd learned, cowered in the corner, holding her baby. A guard in a black suit lay sprawled near the door, blood pooling beneath him. Their eyes met. Come with me, Alina hissed. Now. Amira didn't move, frozen with terror. The boots stopped outside the hallway door. Alina crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed Amira's arm and hauled her upright. The baby screamed louder. Move or we all die. Something in her voice cut through Amira's panic. They ran back through the connecting door just as the nursery entrance exploded inward, the lock blown apart. Alina slammed the connecting door through the bolt. It wouldn't hold long. She shoved Amira toward the closet. Get in, with my son. Cover their mouths if you have to. What are you? Just go. Amira disappeared into the closet with both children as the connecting door shuddered under impact. Once, twice. Alina looked around desperately. The bedroom door to the hallway was still closed, still locked from the inside. But they'd come through at any second. She needed a weapon, needed something, needed. Her eyes fell on the heavy crystal lamp on the nightstand. The door splintered. Alina grabbed the lamp, ripped the cord from the wall, and positioned herself between the closet and the entrance. Her hands were steady, her breathing even, and in her chest, something fierce and primal awakened, the same force that had made her stand against armed marshals, that had made her fight for a dying baby while everyone else watched. They'd called her brave on the plane. They were about to learn she was something more dangerous. A mother protecting her young. The door burst open, and 3 men in tactical gear poured through. Alina swung the lamp with everything she had. The lamp connected with the first attacker's jaw, crystal shattering, blood spraying. He went down hard. Alina didn't stop to think. She drove her knee into the second man's groin as he lunged for her, felt the satisfying crunch as he doubled over. But the third was faster, trained. His hand closed around her throat, slammed her against the wall. Stars exploded across her vision. She clawed at his grip, her lungs screaming. Then he simply stopped. His eyes went wide. His hand released her throat. He crumpled to the floor like a puppet with cut strings, revealing Jaihoon standing behind him, one hand still extended from where he'd touched the man's neck. The other 2 attackers were already down. The first unconscious from Alina's blow. The second writhing on the ground, clutching his leg at an angle that suggested Jaihoon had done more than simply touch him. Are you hurt? Jaihoon's voice was eerily calm. Alina couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She gestured frantically toward the closet. He understood immediately, crossed the room in 3 strides, and pulled open the door. Amira emerged first, clutching her baby, tears streaming down her face. Then Noah, still holding his dinosaur, looking at Jaihoon with those 2 wise eyes. Hi, Noah said quietly. Something in Jaihoon's expression cracked. He dropped to his knees in front of the boy, this powerful man in blood-splattered clothes, and for a long moment just stared. Then his hand reached out, slowly, carefully, asking permission, and touched the birthmark visible on Noah's shoulder. The mark of the Kang. Hello, little cousin, Jaihoon whispered. Behind them, the sound of boots thundered through the villa. Yunmai appeared in the doorway with 4 security personnel, assessed the scene in a glance. The perimeter is secure, 3 more hostiles down, 1 escaped. Find him, Jaihoon said without looking away from Noah, and find out who sent them. Yunmai and her team vanished as efficiently as they'd appeared, dragging the unconscious attackers with them. Alina sank against the wall, her legs finally giving out. The adrenaline was fatting, leaving her shaking. She just fought armed men. She just watched Jaihoon drop people with a touch. She just risked everything for. You saved them. Jaihoon stood, turned to face her. You could have hidden with Noah, could have locked the door and prayed they'd pass you by, but you heard Amira's baby crying and you went to them. I'm a nurse, Alina said hoarsely. It's what I do. No, Jaihoon crossed to her, knelt again, this time before her. The gesture was formal, deliberate, ancient. You're a mother, a warrior, a woman who stands between danger and those who cannot defend themselves. He reached into his jacket, pulled out something that glinted in the dim light. A pendant on a silver chain, jade carved into the shape of a dragon, exquisite and clearly ancient. This belonged to my grandmother. She gave it to my mother, who was meant to give it to my wife. Jaihoon held it out. In my family, this represents protection, strength, the one who guards the family's heart. Jaihoon, I can't. Noah will be my heir. His voice was absolute, final. Not just taught, not just guided. He will be raised as a Kang with all the rights and protections that entails. And you, his eyes met hers, dark and intense and utterly serious. You will be his life-giver, his guardian, the one who ensures he never loses his humanity even as he gains power. Alina looked at Noah, who'd climbed onto the bed and was watching them with that unnerving calm. At Amira, still clutching the baby whose life they'd both saved. At the shattered lamp and broken door and evidence of violence that had come for them all. "They'll come again," she whispered. "Yes," Jai-hoon didn't deny it. "People will always fear what we are, what Noah will become, but they'll have to go through both of us to reach him." He placed the pendant in her trembling hand. "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking you to forget your husband or your life or your daughter." His voice softened. "I'm asking you to let me protect what matters most, to build something stronger than fear, stronger than death." Alina's fingers closed around the jade dragon, still warm from where it had rested against Jai-hoon's chest. "A family," she said. "A fortress," he corrected, "with you as its queen." And in the ruins of the night, with blood drying on the floor and danger still lurking beyond the walls, Alina felt the last thread of her old life snap. She lifted the chain, let Jai-hoon fasten it around her neck, and accepted the weight of a crown she'd never asked for,